Hi, this is video 2 in the basic Lightroom instructions, and uh, this video mainly deals with editing, simple editing and exporting of your picture. Um, so we'll start with launching Lightroom, which is down at the bottom here. And again, as I've said before, it will remember where you left off, so you'll probably end up on the test 2 photographs that we did. Just takes a little time, and it's gone to the last image that we used. Again, just as a reminder, we are in the library section. These are our boxes with our albums and our photographs in. So we're in the M. Rossi photographs. We're in test 2, and there's 10 photographs in there. Again, if we go down to the bottom, you'll actually see the film strip with the 10 photographs, or you can click on the thumbnail and you'll see them all there. If you can recall, what we actually did was just make a very slight adjustment. We did some lens correction and we did some exposure correction. All I'm going to do is I'm going to give that a 1 star, so it's just as the one that we're going to be working on. I'm going to open that up. To do any changes to this, you need to be in the develop section. In the library, it's all about the metadata. In develop, it's the editing side. Now again, what is quite a good practice to do is again, if I go back to the thumbnails, you can do it in the film strip, but it just makes it easier to see, because I want to carry out some very basic editing, but I don't want to destroy the basic file there. Right click, and I'm going to create a virtual copy of that photograph only, and you can see it's a virtual copy. It's got a little flip up on there, so any changes that I would make will only actually affect the virtual copy, not the original copy that we had. So let's click that open, move it into develop, and what we have, we've got some start from the top. Obviously we've got our histogram on here. We can do a resizing. If I click on that, I might decide that actually I want more of a square format on this one. Get rid of some of the background. Again, this is just as an example. I'm not saying you have to do this, it's just one way of doing some work. Do I want to take any more off the bottom? Not necessarily. I think we'll keep that about there. If you're happy with that as a basic layout, I think we're fairly even all the way through. Just press your return key on the keyboard and that will edit it. Again, if I just go back down here, just again, you wouldn't normally keep doing this, but I'm just showing you. There's our original, and this is the one that I've just cropped into. So again, let's open that up again, put it back into develop. White balance. Everything is set in Adobe RGB. My camera set up as Adobe RBG. Obviously Lightroom is RGB, Adobe. Excuse me. And Photoshop, etc. Everything uses that color code. And even when you go to printing, you can use that as a printing preference as well. So just check that your camera set up in as Adobe RGB on its color preference, and you're going to get the same color balance running right the way through. As I said, I set my camera up. Never use auto white balance on my camera. I usually set it to cloudy daylight, unless obviously I'm inside and I've got artificial light, but outside just cloudy daylight. So I know I've got a consistent colour balance. Otherwise, if you put it on auto, it's going to move around all over the place, and every shot that you take might change. I can actually go in here and make changes to it, but get it right in the camera and you won't have to do too much. You can manually change the color temperature, or you can use the little eyedrop there to actually go on to a spot and select a white balance on there. Exposure we played around with last time. Obviously this is just about, we actually had to readjust this because I'd had the camera left on bracketing, which I didn't mean to do, on a shutter burst, and so it was actually overexposed, so actually taken just under a stop out of it. I'm not going to change the contrast. I'll show you what the contrast would do if I went that way. It's gone the extreme, and that way it's washed completely out. To get back to the 0 position, if you just double click, it will actually automatically go back to that last position. Highlights, just looking at that highlight there, not that it's particularly highlighty, but if we wanted to, we could just take a tiny bit of highlight out of there. I mean, usually when I say tiny, is no more than kind of 10 on it. Shadows, this I use quite a lot, but it's usually to get the detail out of the shadow, but we actually haven't got much shadow in our main subject. There's shadow in the background, but we almost want to lose that. But again, I'll just demonstrate. If I actually pull that down, the shadows go darker, and if I go up, that's going to wash it out. Double click it, puts it back to where it was, and I'd rather just leave it there for the moment. Whites is the intensity of the whites, and black is the intensity of the blacks. Not going to change any of those. Not going to change the texture, but the clarity works very nicely by just increasing that, and again, no more than 10, and it just kind of crisps the image up and basically puts structure into it. And it's better to do that than mess around with sharpening. Sharpening is something that you really want to try and avoid, because it does mess up you can get pixelation with it, and if there is something you do need to do, make sure it is the very last thing that you do before you actually create your final image. Dehaze, again, we don't need to do it on this photograph, but it's basically, again, I'll just demonstrate. If I give it more haze, it's kind of saturated it one way, and then it's taken it out the other way. It's just bleached it out. Can be very useful for cloud shots where you want to you've got a bit of a bleached sky and you want to bring out some of the cloud formation. Dehaze is very good for that. Vibrancy is another one which is good, better than color saturation. Vibrancy is a little bit more subtle. I don't think this particular photograph needs it, but again, I'll just demonstrate. Even if I just give it around about 10, it just kind of makes the colours pop a bit. In fact, I don't even mind that. I'll just bring that down to 10. Just pops the colours without going horribly oversaturated, which it would do on saturation. So that's kind of a really good first kind of adjustment on there. You've got your tonal curves where you can actually change the whole lightness and brightness of the photograph or put individual spots in. Again, I'm not going to do anything with that. That's something you can explore and try yourself. Again, on the color settings, you can affect the luminosity, the hue and the saturation on all the different color aspects, but this photograph just doesn't need it. And on detail, I said there's the dreaded sharpening, which I wouldn't suggest you muck around at all with in here. If I was to do any sharpening, it would be if I was in Photoshop and it was a final sharpening filter that I put on it. There's also one in the Nike collection, which is another plugin, and again that is a much better sharpening tool. You get less pixelation on there. Noise reduction. Again, if I go up the top here, I've shot this at 1000 ISO, which obviously isn't particularly high. But if there was any, and there is a slight bit of noise in there, but not really a huge amount to worry about. But if I wanted to reduce the noise out of it, I would actually put some in there. But that will have the effect of softening it as well. So the fact that I've put clarity into it, which is to basically harden it, I'm now doing the opposite and softening it if I wanted to go around that way. But again, I'm just giving it the tiniest amount. You can control the various aspects of what you're adjusting within the noise reduction, but again, it's something for you to explore and try out. Lens correction, as you may recall, was the first thing that we did, and is a kind of for me, is a must-have. Distortion on the lens, well, again, I wouldn't necessarily do that. Vignetting I would do, but I wouldn't do it from here. It would be that I was using the raw filters in Photoshop and doing a lot more on it. And on transform, again, can be very useful if you've not got a very straight image and you need to rotate it to square it up. Obviously this one doesn't need doing. You can move it and line it up nicely on there. Obviously very good if you're doing things like architectural photography and you want to make your lines work. Again, I can delete that. Obviously, because I've cropped in, the image is swinging around in a crop. If it was the whole image, you would start to see white edges and you would need to click crop constraints on it, and that would automatically trim it in. I don't want that rotation, so I double click it and it will take it off, and that looks fine to me. Vertically, again, you can move it and get the uprights. Again, it doesn't really work on this photograph. It would be much better if it was on a building, something with very strong verticals that you wanted to make sure that look correct. Horizontal is a swing left and right, and again, not particularly good on this particular one, so I wouldn't use that. Again, there's lots of other things here, and you can decide and explore if you need those. There's a couple of others here which I've kind of turned down because I very rarely use them. in this program. You can mess around with the grain and vignetting, etc. But again, I wouldn't necessarily do it here. And calibration is you can mess around with, again, the overall tinting and colour balance on parts of the photograph. Again, let's not worry about that. So that would be roughly about as much as I would do on here. You could, if you had some spots on the photograph that you needed despotting, there is a little spotting tool here and some other tools as well, but again, I hardly ever, I really don't use those. If I was going to do any of this work, I'd rather use Photoshop, which is has much more greater variety and better tools. The other thing you might be looking to do, if I actually move over this way, we've got presets over here. So it still tells you where we are in our collection. Presets. Now, some of these come with Lightroom, so you basically got an overall rebalancing. If you want to brighten it up, you want to put high contrast detail, vivid, matting it out, and then there's some kind of creative ones that you can use in here if you fancy it. And again, you just click on that and it will just readjust everything to suit. Again, the other thing is you might be interested thinking about using it in black and white. I do use this just to give myself a first indication if the photograph is worthy of going to black and white, although I would not I would actually produce it within Lightroom, within Photoshop and silver effects in the night collection rather than here. But it does it is good to give you an idea of what could be done with it. So those filters are there. Again, if you wanted just a quick image to export out, you know, there's nothing wrong with you using them. It's just, I suppose I'm used to the more advanced editing, but as I said, no, I'm not saying don't use them. It's just how I actually use them. Again, you could there's plugins here for changing the curve settings if you don't want to use the custom ones over there. Again, don't tend to use those. Grains, if you wanted to do grain, which again I would tend to do in Photoshop. Sharpening, well, no need for that really. Vignetting, again, quite nice if you want to put a bit of a dark halo around it. It can work extremely well. And again, it might give you an idea if you wanted to do further work on it in Photoshop, giving you an idea in here as to which direction you actually want to go to. There are all of these other presets in here are actually part of the night collection plugins, and again, I just would, it's not all of them, it's just a few of them. There is so many, again, I might use them just to give myself an indication if I wanted to go down that route, but I'd rather actually apply those plugins in the night collection itself rather than in here. So not to be ignored, this side. It's just and so quite no problem using them. I mean, that actually with the black and white punch on it actually creates a really nice image without doing a huge amount to it. But we're just going to leave it back into its natural state as we had it. So it could be you say, right, that is it. I'm quite happy with that. I'm not going to go any further. You can export straight from that. And it's very easy. All you just need to do is right click, and if you go down through here and see export, hit the export button, and it will give you this locate. You can set its location. I've just done it so that it just goes on my desktop, so we can have a look at it, and if you like it, you can use it, or you can file it away, or put it in the bin, whatever you want to do. You can name it. I'll just make that as test 2, and it's going to be in a JPEG format. Doesn't have to be JPEG. You'll see that there's TIFF and there's PNG in there if you want to export in that. And as you'll see, the color space is in that Adobe RBG, so that's good. I've just maxed the quality out. However, in terms of its size, you know, maybe I want to export this to put on Facebook. Well, obviously we don't need any more than 72 dpi. We don't need a 300 dpi print version of it. And in terms of, for Facebook, around about 2000 pixels on its long edge, which will be its width on here, gives you a really nice export image. Again, you can put other things on here. Most of this is all turned off. I don't need any of that. So my export, if I hit export, it should put it on my desktop. And again, up in the process button, the progress button is the progress bar is up in the top corner, which I'm not quite sure what. Oh, there it goes. It's done. We'll have a look on the desktop now, but rather than close it, we don't want to close Lightroom down. All we want to do is hide it. So if you click on there, you'll see hide the Lightroom, and it will basically put it back down into here. And there's our little test image there. Obviously, because I'm on Mac, it's going to open it in preview. Double click it, and there it is. And I'll close that off. Obviously, you can rename it. You can put it in a folder. You can upload it to social media if you want, as you wish. Obviously, because that's 72 dpi, that's not really a print version of it. So let's just click that again, and it brings it in there. Again, I'll just go back to that's the film strip. Go back to the thumbnails, and you actually see there's our original 1-star version, and there's our 1-star version copied, and that's been cropped and adjusted, and that's the one that we're using. If I felt that was the one that we want, I could give it kind of 2 or 3 stars, so that I know that's the one I've actually been using. So that's it in its basic form. It is a really good program, Lightroom, not only because you've got all the cataloging, and you've got this actually really good editing suite on here, but if you wanted to, you could do an awful lot with and only stick to here. There are some other features which I'm not going to go into any detail with. Obviously, we know we've been basically working in our library, and we're working in develop. Not really interested in a map. I mean, but it's basically if you have GPS coordinates put onto your onto your camera, you can actually put all the locations of where you took your photographs. So if that's something you're interested in, you could put it in. You can use your images to create a book, such as an album. But you know, however, there's lots of other programs out there. Although this does a job, I think there's better programs out there for doing published work. I would tend to do this in Adobe InDesign, but yeah, no reason why you can't use it. Slideshow is quite interesting, and it's really for screen presentation. So it's because I'm actually in test 2. It's basically going to take those 11 images and make a slideshow out of them, which wouldn't be particularly good, but there's no reason why we can't. Again, you can do all your settings and adjust all your settings in here, the speeds, etc. And you can put some titles, etc. on there. You can do it as in order or a random one. We'll do it. We'll do it in. We'll repeat the slideshow and we'll do it in normal order, and we'll do it at high quality because that always looks. And if you look play, it will actually prepare those as a set. You can actually save those sets, so you can. If you've got some favourite slideshows, it will actually, you can save them as little defaults, put them in your library, and you'll always know where to go and find them. So you don't have to keep re-rendering. But this will just take a little bit of time. My screen is changing, and it will start in a moment. With a little slideshow, and again you can change all the fade in and fade out times, etc. on it. So they're basically two of the same photograph, but the crop version of it. And again, that will just roll on as you wish. And to get out of it, just hit the escape key, and that will take you back to there. You can print out from here as well, and you can set everything up as to how you want to print. Again, I tend to print out of Photoshop just by habit. However, there's nothing wrong with you doing print setups from here. It's pretty good. There's a lot of control over it. And also there is a web function as well, which again I tend to use other programs for web. So this is a very basic web gallery, which is there if you want it, but I said there are much better programs. So back to the library. That's where we are. It will do a backup copy for you. I've got mine set up for kind of once a week, does a backup. Really, apart from my little glitch that I've got, I've had really little problems with it at all. It's a pretty robust program, and a great way of cataloguing your photographs and editing. So I'm going to finish up with that now. So I'm just going to quit my Lightroom, and that will close everything down. And I will be back again with a third video where I'll actually be back into Lightroom, but I will be exporting out of Lightroom to look at editing within Photoshop, and also will be going on to the night collection in editing as well. So that is all for now. So I bid you farewell. Goodbye.